Hi folks, I hope you've had a couple of weeks rest and you've managed to complete all the activities from the last lesson. You're now on to your third distance learning lesson for the English department. So just as a reminder, in the first week we looked at building on our descriptive writing skills. On our second week we looked at show, don't tell, and I know some of you were struggling with that, so we'll do a wee bit of that again. Today we're going to be looking at reflecting, which is vital that you know how to do this in order to write the reflective essay. We're also going to be looking at some examples, which will then help us with week 4 when we look at how to plan our essay. Week 5, we'll look at how to open our essay. And then finally, in week 6, we will get time just to write the essay and make sure we know how to check our work before submitting it. Okay, so as per usual, you've got your spelling starter. So in a minute, I want you to pause this video, write each of these words out 3 times, and then make sure that you add a picture of your handwriting to your OneNote so that I can see that you're doing it, and then go on to distance learning questions in your class team and type in a sentence using at least 3 of the words. Please make sure that you fully punctuate your sentence correctly, capital letters, and spell the words correctly as well. So this week your words are which, threshold, politician, remember. Pause the video now and go on with this activity. Now we're on to our main lesson, but first of all, we're just going to go over some show, don't tell again. Remember, the main thing about show, don't tell is that you don't tell me what emotion you're feeling. So some of you were writing things like, I was as angry as a raging bull. Well, as soon as you've written the word angry, you're no longer showing, you're just telling, okay? But if you just said, my face was purple and I was almost spitting, then that's obvious that you're angry, so you're showing me. Hopefully you can see the difference. So just as a quick reminder, just do this in your OneNote. In 3 sentences, show someone feeling really sad. It doesn't need to be you, it could just be somebody else. Remember to think about facial expressions, body language, physical reactions, tone of voice, and colour of face. Think about your effective word choice, and then can you make sure you can try your best to include 2 examples of figurative language. So add your answer under a heading that just says activity 1 in your OneNote. So pause this video and do that now. Right, we're moving on to our main part of the lesson today, which is reflection and reflecting. What does it actually mean to reflect? Well, it essentially means looking back. So it's thinking about the thoughts and feelings you had at the time, but how you feel about them now. Okay? So I can think of plenty of times when maybe I've lost my temper, but now that I'm calm and I think back, that's when I can reflect and go, okay, I was maybe a bit out of line there, or maybe I could have just taken a breath and thought about it a bit more. Or sometimes I'll say, no, even looking back, I was quite right to be angry, but maybe I could have handled it a bit better. So that's reflecting, okay? So if we use the example from last week's show, don't tell paragraph, the stairs were now right in front of me. They didn't welcome me forward, and I honestly wasn't sure if my feet would actually move anymore. And that's when I realised the saliva had decided to completely vacate my mouth. How on earth was I going to manage this? And then you have a reflective chunk at the end. Of course, looking back, I'm so glad that I did this. Yes, it was a shaky start, literally, but once I croaked out my first note, I did actually manage to finish the song. I'd achieved something I never thought I could, and what's more, I enjoyed it. That was the moment that I realised that I am capable of doing amazing things, and because of that moment, I am much more willing to push myself to achieve my goals. So here the person's finished their show don't tell paragraph, but then they've added a few more sentences to reflect and think back and what lessons have they learned, okay? Which moves us on quite nicely to this example here. Now, it's from a website called The Right Source, and all the links to this website that I want you to look at will be on your team's assignment, okay? It's called A Lesson to Learn. My little brother is so irritating. All day long he says, Eddie, I wonder why people can talk but animals can't. Or, I wonder why the ocean looks blue. Of course, I don't know the answers, but I don't let him know that. I just make up reasonable explanations and he accepts them as if I'm the smartest person in the world. Before I answer one of his questions, I usually tell him that he's pretty stupid and asks too many questions. Well, yesterday we both got our report cards. I got B's and C's and he got straight A's. Under the comment section on my report card, it said Eddie would be getting better grades if he asked more questions. Of course, on my brother's report card, it said just the opposite. To make things worse, my brother squawked all day about how I was so stupid for not asking any questions. I just sighed and told him he was right. I wouldn't make fun of him anymore for asking so many questions. Yes, I learned a lesson from my little brother. Never be afraid to ask questions and never be afraid to wonder why. So it was just a short bit of reflection at the end of that, but hopefully you're starting to understand what I mean when I ask you to reflect in your essay. Okay, so summing up then. In your essay, you will narrate, you will describe the thoughts and feelings you had at the time, and you will reflect. You will now think about the lessons that you've learned. Okay, so as I said to you already, you're going to have a team's assignment, and in this, you're going to have a go yourself. So, what you're going to do is you're going to use the show don't tell paragraph you wrote last week. I want you to add that in again, but this time at the bottom of the paragraph, I want you to write a sentence or two to reflect on how you felt at the time. If you haven't already added in this show don't tell paragraph, if you haven't done it, you need to do it, and it will make your life easier when you have to write the essay. Okay, so you're going to have a couple of examples. The links for these are on your team's assignment, okay? You can either use Immersive Reader if you want some help with reading it, or just read it on your own, or there will be separate videos where I will be reading them out if you just want to listen to them, okay? So your main activity then, what I want you to do is I want you to go onto your team and you'll see that you've got a new assignment for next week. I want you to click on that assignment. Read these two examples, and the second one you'll need to annotate it. That means, remember, making notes on the side, and you'll be looking to be able to identify figurative language, when they've used the senses, when they've used show don't tell, and when they've reflected. After that, I want you to add in your show don't tell paragraph from the previous week, but this time you're going to be adding one or two sentences at the end of that paragraph where you reflected. And the most important part of all this, at the end, please click hand in so that I know that you've done it. Do not click hand in if you have not completed the assignment. I will notice that. Right, so that was the end of your reflective writing lesson, and we're now moving on to some RUI. Please remember that every Thursday I give out the answers to the RUI activities, okay? And you have to self-mark. So last week we looked at formal and informal language, and this week we are looking at jargon and speciality language, okay? Remember, this is from the Analysing Language and Style section of the textbook that we would normally use. So what do I mean by jargon then? So jargon refers to specific language used in particular subjects. So here's an example. Affidavit, alimony, arbitration, civil case, decree, plaintiff, and summons. What I would like you to do, and let's see who's the first one that does this. To go on your team, go into the distance learning questions, and I just want you to type up what job you would have if you would use that jargon. Okay? Now, normally, of course, I'd say the first one would win maybe some chocolatey goodness, but you can just hold me to that when you come back, okay? The other thing about jargon, though, is that specific words can mean different things to different groups of people. So a word can be jargon for one thing in one group, maybe the workplace or a sport, and it can mean something totally different in another one. So I'll give you an example here, and this is from the textbook. Passing. So if you were a chef, to pass would mean to push food through a sieve. If you were a teacher, passing would mean achieving success in an exam. And if you were a footballer, passing would mean kicking a ball from one player to another. So that one word, which is part of jargon, means different things depending on what type of jargon language we're talking about here. Okay. So your activity then for RUI, I'm going to put page 31 of the textbook into your team, and I want you to complete this either directly in OneNote or on paper and add a picture to OneNote. Then on Thursday, I'm going to hand out the answers, and I need to see that you're marking them yourself. Okay, I'm not marking your RUI, you need to do that. Okay. Finally, we're on to poetry, and this week I thought we'd look at Norman McCaig. This is one of his really famous poems called Basking Shark. To stub an oar on a rock where none should be, to have it rise with a slouch out of the sea is a thing that happened once, too often, to me. But not too often, though enough. I count as gain that once I met, on a sea tin tacked with rain, that room-sized monster with a matchbox brain. He displaced more than water. He shoggled me centuries back. This decadent townie shook on a wrong branch of his family tree. Swish up the dirt, and when it settles, a spring is all the clearer. I saw me in one fling emerging from the slime of everything. So who's the monster? The thought made me grow pale for 20 seconds while, sail after sail, the tall fin slid away, and then the tail. Be really interesting to get your thoughts on this poem. So I'm going to add a section into your team's assignment just for you to add in some just wee musings that you might have and maybe reflect on it a little bit and think about what lessons you learned from this poem. Okay then, so for next Monday, remember you have a team's assignment. You'll be annotating an example, then you'll be adding some reflection to your show don't tell paragraph, and most importantly, if you want it marked, which hopefully you do, you need to click hand in. Okay? Right, that was all for today. So it's a nice short lesson today, and I'm looking forward to seeing all your reflective examples.